As a community, we build empathy, curiosity, joy, and connection when we share stories with you. Welcome to Storytellers Project, part of the USA Today network.
Hi, and welcome to our Storytellers Project show tonight. My name is Megan Finnerty, and I'm the founder and director, and I am a journalist at the USA Today network. And we genuinely appreciate you joining us here this evening, where we're going to join 5 Americans from across the nation to create community, all talking about food and family. I cannot wait for you to meet these people, because we know next week is Thanksgiving, a time to think and talk about food and family. Since 2016, the Storytellers Project has brought more than 100 shows each year to communities across the country. But we're still canceled with in-person shows at least through through next year. Hopefully we'll be back in real life starting in February. So instead, we've handpicked truly incredible storytellers and inspiring people from across the nation to celebrate food and family right this minute. We know the stories are going to be charming, funny, relatable, and touching. And so I want to bring up our storytellers right now. I'd like to welcome up Tracy Schumacher of Rochester, New York. Hi, Tracy. Tracy's coming to us from the Democrat and Chronicle, which is one of our sister newspapers right there in Rochester. So thanks so much for being here.
Happy to be here.
Heck yeah. Gabrielle SHEA is coming to us from Brooklyn, New York. Hi, Gabrielle.
Hi. Happy to be here.
Yeah, so excited to have you. Definitely you guys are going to be excited about Gabrielle's story, because I think a lot of people are going to be able to relate to the topic. Melissa Souza Fees is here from Phoenix. So she's one of my neighborhoods, but hi, Melissa. Nice to meet you. Or not meet you, see you. I have
great to be here.
Before. Thank you so much. ROHINI CHANDRA is here from Los Angeles. She is coming to us pre-taped, so we're not going to get a chance to say hi to her right this second, but you will see her in the show in a minute. And STEPHANIELASKA is here from San Francisco, and we are happy to have you. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi, nice to be here.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So you probably noticed, so we'll get right into this show. You might have noticed we have an all-lady lineup this evening. That actually just happens sometimes. It's somewhat rare. I think this is our 47th show of the pandemic, and we have not had a monogender evening, but tonight we do, and we are excited to have them. They are obviously from all walks of life and all parts of the country. Tonight is not a TED Talk, Toastmasters, a how-to, an inspirational speech, not informational either. It's not a lecture or a slideshow. We're not going to sell you anything, like literally not even a subscription right now on the internet. Instead, this is storytelling, and storytelling is about visiting. We invite you to open your heart and your mind to receive the stories from people you're curious about, because that's how you get closer to others. Some of our storytellers are going to be super polished and professional, and some are going to be casual and conversational. We don't coach people on the performance of their full selves. Instead, we just make sure that their stories have a full and satisfying narrative arc. We ask that you receive all of them, because that's how community connecting happens. We believe creating empathy and understanding is truly vital, and that's one of the primary roles of America's media. And we know that it is especially important in times of ongoing uncertainty, like the ones we're still in now. Although I do feel like things are getting a little better. With that, I'm excited to welcome up our first storyteller. Are you ready, Tracy? The floor is yours.
It's 2003. And my 2 sons and I are at playgroup at Betsy's house. Now, playgroup was a great time for the kids. I enjoyed seeing the other moms, but I always left playgroup feeling a little insecure. These other moms, they had houses that were neater and cleaner and more organized than mine. When there were squabbles with the kids, other moms always seemed to be calmer in handling the situation than I was. And some of these moms could make a sticker chart and get their kids to do chores, something I was never able to pull off. The one thing I did feel good about was that I cooked for my family. I cooked a healthy meal every night, and we all gathered around the table. And I always liked it when my family liked my food. So that day at playgroup, Betsy brings out a stack of the cookbooks that you can find at the grocery store checkout. At least you could. And she said, "Does anyone want a cookbook?" And I said, "Sure, I love to cook. How do you happen to have these cookbooks?" And she said, "Well, I was at the Pillsbury Bake Off and I won this refrigerator and I won a few $1,000s. And I was like, "That's awesome. How'd you do that?" And she said that she took a complicated recipe for seafood lasagna and simplified it and served it over biscuits. And that was her original recipe for that contest. And I thought, I wonder if I could do that. So I kept my eyes out for the rules of the next contest to be announced. And finally, they appeared online. Now, the Pillsbury Bake Off started in 2014. It was a promotion for Pillsbury's Best Flour, and some iconic recipes have come out of it. If you've ever made or tasted the peanut butter cookies that have Hershey Kisses in the middle, that was a Pillsbury Bake Off recipe. So I looked at the rules and saw that there was a long list of products you could use to qualify for the competition. And the grand prize that year was $1 million. $1 million. So I started experimenting and found, like, I think we all can understand that, cooking dinner every night can be a chore. But when you're cooking to enter a contest, it became kind of a creative challenge. It was kind of fun. My kids enjoyed it. They enjoyed being my taste testers. They started assigning number grades to my recipes. And it got to the point where I had to institute a rule that if I'm making this for the contest, then I'd like to know what you think. But if I'm just making dinner, I just want to hear thanks, Mom, for making dinner. So by the contest deadline, I had entered 6 recipes in the Pillsbury Bake Off. And then I forgot about it. I didn't even tell anyone that I entered except for my own family. I really did not think I had much of a chance. Fast forward several months, and it's the day after Easter 2004. The phone rings. It's a California phone number, which seems kind of strange. And I answer it. And the woman on the other end says, "Hi, Tracy. I'm from Pillsbury. Congratulations. You are a finalist in the Pillsbury Bake Off, and we're going to fly you to Hollywood, and you are going to be one of 100 people to compete for $1 million. Now, I could tell this woman really thought that I was going to jump up and down and scream and all that, but honestly, I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. I barely got out enough words just to hear what the details of this thing was. So for the next several weeks, I practiced my recipe. It was called sun-dried tomato and goat cheese appetizers. My in-laws agreed to stay with my kids while we flew to Hollywood, which was a prize in itself. And finally, it was time to go to Hollywood. When we got there, there was a shuttle bus taking people to the hotel, and everyone had brought with them the little cookbooks that are at the grocery store. They sent us each one that year. And people had Sharpies, and they were all signing each other's cookbooks and chatting. It was really fun. And I started chatting with these women and realized that some of these women and men, there were a few men. In fact, it was Betsy's husband was one of the men there, but that's another story. So several of these people had competed in other cooking competitions. Some had been in other Pillsbury bake-offs. And I was like, oh boy, I really don't have much of a chance. This isn't going to happen. But we were in Hollywood. We were going to have a good time. There was a party that night. And the next morning was time for the bake-off. So the 2004 Pillsbury Bake-Off was held in the Hollywood and Vine complex where the Oscars are held. And that morning, all 100 finalists gathered in this room. And then, led by a life-size Pillsbury Doughboy, we marched into the contest. It was held in this giant ballroom where the after parties for the Oscars are held. And there were rows upon rows of ovens, 100 and probably a few spares. And between each oven was a little cupboard with countertop. And we had to make our recipe 3 times, once for the judges, once for photography, and once to hand out to the people that were visiting the competition. So I made my recipe. My hands were shaking. I opened my tube of Pillsbury Golden Layers flaky biscuits, pulled them apart and put them in mini muffin cups. I mixed up my filling and put it in the muffins and popped them in the oven. They came out and they looked just like they did at home. They were golden brown. I plopped them onto a platter and thought, this is what they look like. I'm going to turn them into the judges. And that's what I did. So now the pressure was off because the rest really wouldn't matter in terms of that $1 million prize. So I made my second recipe, looked the same as the first. That went to the photography. And then I'm mixing up my third batch, mixing together the sun-dried tomato and goat cheese, mayonnaise. And I see somebody looking over my shoulder, and I turn and look, and it's Dick Clark. Dick Clark was the host that year. I grew up watching him on American Bandstand and New Year's Rockin' Eve. And Dick and I had this conversation about cooking. He told me that he made chicken with sun-dried tomato and goat cheese at home. And it was just a surreal moment, this iconic man and I having this conversation about cooking. And he moved on to the next person. And I handed out my recipe to the people that were walking the show floor. And then I was done, hours ahead of time. So that gave me a chance to walk around and see what everyone else was doing. And some of these dishes looked beautiful. They smelled delicious. Some of these contestants had made all 3 batches of their recipe and were analyzing to see which one looked the best, which I thought, ooh, I didn't think about that one at all. Some of these people were very carefully arranging each of their goodies on a platter. I hadn't thought of that either. Some people had fresh herbs as garnishes. They had cut little tiny perfect shreds of basil and were placing each shred on their dish one by one. I didn't think of that either. And I thought, oh God, I should have really thought more about plating this dish, but I didn't. I didn't think I had a chance. There's a big party that night. We had fun. And the next day was time for the award ceremony. So the award ceremony, they didn't march us in after the Pillsbury Doughboy. It was a little more informal. And there were 4 categories, and each category winner won $10,000. And then from those 4 category winners would be the $1 million winner. The first 4 were announced, and then the 4th was fast snacks and appetizers, which was my category. And Dick Clark announced the winner, and it was sun-dried tomato and goat cheese appetizers. I won my category, $10,000. And now I'm on stage. I'm on stage with 3 other women and Dick Clark. And one of us is going to win $1 million. Not Dick, but one of the other of us. I look out into the audience and I catch my husband's eye. He blows me a kiss. And I just couldn't believe this moment. It was so surreal. They wheel a cart on the stage and there's a cloche on the cart. And they pick up the cart to reveal the winning recipe. And it was oats and honey granola pie from a woman from Findlay, Ohio, right next to me. The confetti flew. Those of us that didn't win were ushered off the stage. And I went home and things went back to normal. A couple days later, we're in line at the grocery store. And my son spots the cookbook at the grocery store checkout. And he says to the cashier, "My mom's in that cookbook." And she said, "Oh, really?" And he said, "Yes, my mom went to the Pillsbury Bake Off and she made sun-dried tomato and goat cheese appetizers and she won $10,000. Now, my son had a speech delay. I'm not entirely sure she understood what he was saying, but I understood. And in that moment, I thought, I might not have the neatest house. I didn't win the $1 million, but in this moment, my son is bragging about me and he's proud of me. And that feels like $1 million. Thank you.
Tracy, thank you so much. Oh my gosh. I so appreciate your story and your sense of humor and your gentle Dick Clark jokes.
Thank you.
Can I ask real quick, is it still a family favorite all these years later?
Oh God, no.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, clearly we did not rehearse. Oh no, Tracy's connection dropped. We did not kick her off. Okay, we're going to keep going. Oh my gosh. Well, we appreciate Tracy. Also, we always appreciate our colleagues at the Democrat and Chronicle in Rochester serving their community. It is my joy to bring up our next storyteller. Gabrielle SHEA is coming to us live from Brooklyn, New York, where she's going to tell us a story about what I know is one of everybody's favorite Thanksgiving side dishes. Take it away.
All right. So in my teens, you couldn't tell me anything. I swore that I was a chef extraordinaire. Granted, I was only feeding myself and my brother, but up here, my cooking was the bomb. My specialty of choice was baked macaroni and cheese. Now, bear with me while I take you through this recipe. Step 1, pull a box of Kraft mac and cheese out of your kitchen cabinet. Step 2, cook according to package directions. Step 3, place said mac and cheese in a baking dish and top with an even layer of cornflakes. Now I'm going to give you all a moment to clutch your pearls because I know that that is pure blasphemy. And step 4, place the dish in the oven and cook until cornflake crumble is golden brown. Now you all know that I should have gotten my black card revoked for that. Now in high school, I hung out with a lot of friends. One day I went to my friend Kelly's house and her mom had just finished making dinner. She made mac and cheese. She asked me if I wanted to try her mac and cheese, and I'm a lover of food, so I wasn't going to turn her down. But I also wanted to see how her version compared to mine. So as she was plating, I decided to rattle off my recipe. I was a little cocky, overly confident, and I still couldn't understand why they were looking at me like I was crazy. Before I could finish, she immediately shoves a forkful into my mouth. And when I tell you the flavors exploded, I thought, is that cheddar? Mozzarella? She used real cheese. It was life-changing, life-changing. I begged my friend's mom to share her recipe with me. And to my surprise, she took pity on me. And that day I learned how to make real baked macaroni and cheese. Fast forward a few years and I meet this guy. Frank and we dated for some time, and he felt that, all right, now you can meet the family. I had met his mom prior, I met his sister, but there were 4 other siblings, their significant others, and about 20 plus nieces and nephews. This was huge. I was about to meet the entire family and I had to make a good impression. Now, I'm Caribbean, and when we are invited over someone's house, we cook. We do not do store-bought. And of course, I was going to make my baked mac and cheese. Now, cooking for me is a sign of love. It's a sign of respect. It's like I'm giving a piece of myself when I'm feeding people. So it truly is really, really important to me, and I take it very seriously. And also, Frank was Irish, so I kind of wanted to show those white folk how black folk throw down in the kitchen. So I was so excited, but also very anxious to meet his entire family. What made it even more nerve-wracking was he wanted to do this on Thanksgiving Day. Now, the sides on Thanksgiving are very important. In my opinion, even more important than the turkey. And mac and cheese is up there with mashed potatoes and candied yams and collard greens. So if you're going to do it, you got to do it right. You have to bring it. And I thought, and I was confident. I knew that I could. So on Thanksgiving Day, we get to Frank's sister's house, and he immediately puts my mac and cheese on the table right next to the turkey. Introductions start. Everyone's having a good time, and dinner begins. I'm watching from across the room as Frank goes for my mac and cheese. I knew he loved it, so I wasn't shocked. But I'm noticing that he does not look like he's enjoying it. I am a bit confused, a little offended. He walks over to me, and I'm about to ask him, like, what the heck is going on here? And before I could finish my question, he shoves a forkful in my mouth. I start to chew, I start to gag, and I'm about to throw up when I realize, holy crap, I used sweetened condensed milk instead of evaporated milk, which is what the recipe called for. Man, I immediately go into panic mode. Frank grabs him by the shoulders and he says, babe, I got you. He performs some Black Ops covert extraction mission and grabs the mac and cheese off the table and tosses it in the trash before anyone notices. I was now in this place, in this space between relief and utter embarrassment, because that was such a rookie mistake. How do you not taste your food before you serve it to make sure it's delicious? I just couldn't believe that I had done that. I was sure at that point that Frank was going to throw in the towel and say, all right, you can't even get mac and cheese right. This relationship is over. Well, luckily, he did not throw in the towel and decided to invite me back to his family's for Christmas dinner. And I knew I had to redeem myself. There was no way I was going to make them think that I could not make mac and cheese. So I did it again. But this time I made sure that I tasted it, lesson learned, before serving it to ensure that the correct ingredients were in this mac and cheese dish. We get to his sister's house. And again, everyone's enjoying themselves, having a good time. And the mac and cheese goes on the table and everyone digs in. They're eating it and I'm seeing that everyone is loving it. And I even hear one person say, oh my goodness, this is delicious. I can't believe I missed this on Thanksgiving Day. And I look at Frank because we got a secret thing going on. And we kind of wink at each other because we're the only two that knows what actually happened on Thanksgiving. 20 years later, Frank and I are married, been married for 20 years. And for every family dinner, I still make my special baked mac and cheese. And to this day, it is still the most sought after dish on the dinner table. Thank you.
Gabrielle, thank you. Okay, I do have a quick question for you. Did you really give us your entire actual recipe, or did you secretly hold something back so none of us could actually like steal your magic?
I'm going to say yes to that.
Okay.
You know, I got to keep it special. Got to keep it mine.
That's true. That's true.
You can totally use the cornflakes version. Feel free to use the cornflakes version. But the other one, I'm going to keep that to myself.
But always condensed milk is a hard no.
Yeah, sweetened condensed milk. Don't do it.
Milk. Okay, I hear you. Thank you so much for your story.
Thank you.
Heck yeah. Well, everyone, we are so excited to have all of you joining us. I hope you're thinking about what you're making for the holidays. You're getting ready for your cooking and your family, and you're thinking about these moments. I hope you're also thinking about the idea that like even disasters can make for incredible stories, as you heard there, and even near misses can make for incredible stories. So I hope as you're heading into the Thanksgiving season, you're not like feeling too much pressure. That said, I was already this morning like looking at something on Ina Garten's Instagram feed, like updating all of my shopping list, being like, I could make that. I could level up this year. Who knows? With that, I'd like to welcome up our third storyteller, Melissa Souza-Fees of Phoenix. Melissa?
Great. I know that my memories of my grandmother are so intertwined with the taste of her cooking and her kitchen, her Eden kitchen on Belfast Road. And I know that when I make one of her recipes, I create an endless table back to her. It was Christmas of 2020. We're in the middle of a worldwide pandemic, and my family is trying to figure out how to make tamales separate instead of together for the first time in all of our lives. I was getting texts and calls from my aunts and cousins. I had some notes from a spring break project I had taken on to try to capture the taste of my grandmother's kitchen. And who was my grandmother? My Nana. Her name was Ramona Garcia Cesate, an immigrant from Mexico who married Candido Cesate. And they together had 2 boys and then 6 daughters. And those 8 got married and had 23 kids. Those 23 had 35. And the next generation is just getting started. In fact, we're expecting a baby to be born today. Her cooking was epic. Those sons-in-law absolutely loved it, as well as all of her tribe. My cousin Mark used to say, I'd eat anything that she would cook up in that cast iron pan of hers. The funny thing about this project I'd taken on is I did not know how to cook back then. I mean, my kitchen in grad school lay dormant. The microwave was used for occasional baked potato, but mostly it was the Wendy's dollar menu. But I came armed with a set of red measuring cups and measuring spoons because my grandmother didn't have that. She did everything by her hand, by her sight, by taste. And we worked pretty well together. She would measure the salt. I would tip it into a paper towel and then put it into the measuring spoon and record it. We did well until we got to a liquid measure, a liquid ingredient. Apparently, there's like a whole other kind of measuring cup for liquids. I didn't know that. And my grandmother, well, she used whatever was handy. If she was making her tortilla recipe and needed 2 cups of warm water, she might grab the ASU souvenir cup because by then she knew 2 cups of warm water, well, that's about at Sparky's head. But here we were trying to use the standard measure. And we got to the oil and she left a little lip. And I said, Nana, you have to get it to the top. And she looked at me and said, every time? Well, we got through them and the recipes that we worked on were my favorites. Beans and tortillas and her rice and her salsa and her bondiga soup and calabacitas. And the prize of her kitchen, which was her chile colorado, her red chili. My friend Alex nicknamed it red gold because it's one of his favorite things to eat. In the 5 years that passed after that spring break, many things happened. I got married and John and I moved to Boston. And a year before that, my grandfather had passed away suddenly. That fall of 96, received a call from my dad. And he said that my grandmother had suffered a serious heart attack. I was able to see her in the hospital and she thankfully survived. And we would return back in December. And December meant the Christmas tamales. Tamales were a big deal to my grandmother. She had been making them for as long as, of course, I could remember, but since she had started her family with my grandfather. It had started to be her gift to her children, and we would all help in the endeavor. It started with meat cutting, and my uncles would cut as much as 65 pounds of meat some years, and they would cook it in a broth. And the next morning, we'd all arrive there. Somebody's job was to get the masa freshly milled at a gourmet grocery store. And there that masa is combined with the broth and the fat, and it's kneaded by hand until it's smooth enough to spread on the back of a corn husk. And my childhood is filled with the memories of my mom and my Aunt Leslie working by my Nana's kitchen window, bent over a giant bowl of masa, spreading for hours. And the stories and laughter flowing. One story they'd love to tell is one year the men had to finish the tamales because swine flu had struck many that year. And a lot of the women were sick, including my grandmother, and they had to spread. Well, they weren't as patient, maybe. And they nicknamed those tamales tamalones because they were very, very thick. Well, that year was different. We didn't have my grandmother. She had been admitted to the hospital the day before. And we were making tamales without her for the first time. She had been in charge of the production since 1934, and she had always made the spicy red chili filling that goes inside the tamale. It goes right in the middle, it's folded, and then we wrap them and steam them, and they're ready for Christmas Day. Well, I have aunts that could step in and do that filling, but nobody really wanted to step into those shoes. And somehow I found myself at my grandmother's right front gas burner. Her pink backsplash was to the front of me and my family was to the back. And I started to melt the fat into the big pan. I knew I had learned to make these recipes because one day I would have to make them without her, but this was all happening way too soon. I said a prayer and I thought about her, and I'm sure she was rooting for us. And I got through that first batch. My Aunt Connie took the second, and we were off to the races. My Uncle Mundy's my oldest uncle, and he came to my grandmother's home that day for lunch. And no sooner had he walked in the door that we unwrapped a tamale for him to taste. I'm sure he had his doubts. I mean, he'd left his 7 younger siblings in charge of the tamales. Well, he tasted it and he said, "That is good." He was a little bit surprised, but I think he was very relieved. Christmas was saved, and my grandmother was released the next day, and we had Christmas with her and for 2 more. The year following, as a gift to my aunts, I published the recipes I had taken down from my grandmother, as well as one from each of them and several of my cousins. They're all amazing cooks. This year, I had to recruit my 5 children to help make the tamales. They each had to take a tamale station or 2. And I have to give them a shout out. They all spread the masa better than me, but they still need me for the red gold. And it's fun because sometimes when they visit, when they come in from school or it's their birthday, they often choose as their special food recipes from my grandmother's kitchen. And I know that when I cook them and we're all sitting at the big table together, that she's with us in spirit. And we create that endless table back to her. We honor her for all the love that she gave us, and we remember her forever.
Oh, Melissa, thank you so much for your story. And thank you for introducing us to your grandma and so many of your family members.
Thank you.
I deeply appreciate it. I know so much of getting ready for the holidays is also thinking about it's as much as who's with us as it is, I think, remembering and telling stories about who's not with us right now. So
Right.
I really appreciate your story.
Thank you.
Like a little bit teary-eyed. Maybe you are too, though. It's a particularly beautiful story. Let's take a tiny breath. So we now want to take just a moment to thank one of our supporters, our longtime supporters of the Storytellers Project, and that's Fairy Tale Brownies. They are based here in Phoenix, where I live, because in 2014, the founders of the company approached us at the Arizona Republic, where the project launched, and said, "Hey, you're called the Storytellers Project. We're about fairy tales. We should do something together." And since then, they've been providing brownies to all of our subscribers in real life. So if you come to one of our shows in any one of the cities that we operate in across the country, like Nashville, Louisville, new this year in Austin in 2022, you get a brownie for being a subscriber. During the pandemic, though, they have stuck with us and they've sent all of our Storytellers brownies. But here's what's in it for you. If you are low-key stressed out about the supply chain getting you all of your holiday ingredients, Fairy Tale Brownies is like, hey, don't worry about it. You can just order dessert from us. They are serious because they own brownies.com, which you will never forget. And they can send you like blondies, cookies, brownies, all kinds of stuff. And it's all individually wrapped. It's made right here in Phoenix. I've been to their big, huge industrial kitchen. Also, you could use it as an opportunity instead of sending flowers or something. You can always say, "I'm thinking of you this Thanksgiving. Here is a giant box of brownies," which in my personal experience is always the right decision. So we want to say thank you to Fairy Tale Brownies for your ongoing support of the Storytellers Project, because we know when we share stories, whether they're folk tales, fairy tales, myths, legends, or family stories, we share what matters to the most of us. If you want to get more into this brownie action, you can check them out. If you see there, we got a code for you right beneath. We genuinely appreciate them supporting us. But you can also enter a chance to win a brownie gift and you'll get a discount. So if you go to www.brownies.com and you can sign up for an email if you use the word Storytellers. We'll put that in our chat if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. I know it's a lot to keep track of, but we really appreciate the whole Fairy Tale Brownies team. Awesome. Okay. All right. I would like to bring up Rohini is going to tell us a story about something that actually happened during the pandemic and is fairly dramatic. She's going to take us from the United States to India, and she's going to share some, I think, really eye-opening perspectives. So Rohini, we're excited to have you here.
My heartstrings were being pulled. Hi, my name is ROHINI Chandra. I was sitting on the 10th floor balcony of a tall apartment building in the state of Haryana. This is the remote, beautiful countryside where my parents are residing during their retirement. They were once Indian immigrants to America, almost 40 years ago, which makes me a first-generation Asian Indian American. And every few years or so, I get to visit India. That's right, I get the best of both worlds. In fact, visiting India is basically a chance for me to take a break from the fast-paced life that I have in the States. And every time I visit, I first have to digest the culture shock. It's like entering a whole new world. First, I have to get used to the smell, which is a mix of the spices, the ashes, the sweat, and the pollution. I was sitting peacefully on the balcony one morning, and my dad decided to bring a plate of roti, or a whole wheat flat tortilla as we know it. And I had my usual visitors, a couple of pigeons who I love to call the lovebirds. And so we were sitting together, and I was just relaxing, and I knew I had to get going with my day. My friends and family know me as an absolute free spirit who always looks for an adventure. And the sound of the lorries, or the trucks, and the auto rickshaws in the distant highway was a sign that I really had to start my day. And so I started looking below at the fields, looking for my next adventure. And I saw these sheep and these herders, and I said, And there it was, this very dark haze or smoke in the distant sky. It was covering the blue sky completely, and I asked my dad, what is that? And he said, it's the end of the harvesting season for the farmers. They're clearing the fields below so that they can grow new crops for the next season. And there it was, my next adventure. My eyes lay on a family of 4. And they had these warlike machetes, and they were slashing their crops from the very root. And I never seen
All right. Oh man, I am so sorry. There's something that went wrong with Rohini's taping story, but it is so good. And she, like, I heard it earlier, and so I'm genuinely so sorry. We will go to our next storyteller, and if we can iron it out, we will add her back in. But I am bummed out because her story is a real consciousness growing narrative. So thank you, Rohini, for recording ahead and being with us tonight. But I know these things happen with technology. So with that, STEPHANIELASKA is coming to us from San Francisco with a story about, hi, Stephanie. Do you see her amazing setting? Stephanie's story is about truly changing her life and now she works to change the lives of others. Take it away.
81 pounds. I don't really know how old I was at the time, but I remember that weight. I was in elementary school when the teacher had us all line up by our size. I was the tallest and the heaviest in the class at 81 pounds. That was the first memory where I realized maybe something was wrong with me. I'm sure everyone can relate to this. When you stand out, feel out of place. For me, that was my moment. I've struggled with my weight for my entire life. At my heaviest, I weighed close to 300 pounds, size 24, 26, and I thought, this is me. But it wasn't until I was flying, I was attending a work meeting, when I realized that my weight was spiraling out of control. The plane was preparing for takeoff when I was shocked to discover my seatbelt wouldn't close. I was so embarrassed. I didn't know what to do. I covered my lap with my suit jacket. I just pretended to be asleep. Now, was that my rock bottom? Sadly, it wasn't. Months later, I was at Disneyland with my family. I was on a roller coaster ride with my then 5-year-old son, the Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. It started off really fun, but it quickly became a nightmare. My son almost flew out of the ride after the first hill. Because I was so large, the safety bar stopped only at my stomach, leaving my little boy completely unprotected. The body I was in, it wasn't working for me anymore or my family. My weight was affecting other people. Now I realize not all of us can change the body that we live in, but for me, I knew change was within my control. Now that doesn't mean I knew what to do. I felt really lost and mad, very embarrassed. I didn't know where to start. The advice people gave me didn't make sense. Low fat, eat less, no dessert, feel hungry. So many rules. Now, I've been on diets like this since second grade. I've always failed. It felt really confusing to me. Like food isn't good or bad, it's just food. I hoped I could figure out maybe there was another way. Soon after, I was at a friend's barbecue. Now, I noticed her husband, he had lost a lot of weight. Everyone's looking at him. But he was carrying this big plate of food. He was eating chicken, he was drinking beer. I was kind of intrigued. Not necessarily because of the chicken, but maybe because of the beer. He seemed to be going about weight loss in a different way. Maybe it was an approach I hadn't seen before. He seemed to be doing something that worked for him. No, I didn't follow his diet. That would have been like a short story, too easy, right? But I did become hopeful in that moment. I started to wonder, could I figure out how to lose weight too on my own terms? I started down a path of my own self-discovery. I began eating different types of food and really paying attention to how they made me feel. I started to lose weight, 10 pounds that first month, and that was just the beginning. Over the course of a year and a half, I lost 140 pounds. 140 pounds. Now, people noticed, and they asked a lot of questions. I avoided answering. Talking about my body felt embarrassing. I knew I wasn't losing weight the traditional way. I was eating a lot of foods some people thought were bad. And I still ate dessert, sometimes for breakfast. And I drank alcohol, though not at breakfast. But overall, I wasn't trying to fix myself. I was just learning what was working for me. Partway throughout my journey, I'd probably lost like 50 pounds at this point. I was at this graduation breakfast with a bunch of family. And I just came back from the buffet table and I was holding this big overflowing plate of food. I had scrambled eggs and sausage, strawberries, whipped cream. I couldn't wait to dive in. The person seated next to me, he leaned in really close and he started whispering some helpful advice. You know, you'd probably lose weight a lot faster if you stopped eating so much. In that moment, I just felt crushed, more embarrassed than ever. I mean, this is why I didn't like talking about what I was doing. Where was this chump when I was eating Pop-Tarts for breakfast and weighed 300 pounds? It made me so angry. But at the same time, I just sat there. I turned to my computer to help me process my feelings. I started kind of journaling. Surprisingly, it felt really cathartic. I began to think about it. Were there other people out there, people just like me? Who was standing up for them? I felt compelled to do something. I started a few groups on social media, started writing. And on a whim, I made a few attempts to publish what I'd written. Now, of course, everyone official said, no. Who does she think she is? No one's going to want that advice. Woo, that got me fired up. I became determined to share what I had learned about food. And I found some people that wanted to listen. They too were tired of following the rules. I mean, have a sweet tooth? So what? Drink Diet Coke? Who cares? I'm too old to change some of my habits. And maybe I'm not the person or the thing that needs fixing. I mean, why can't the rules about what we're supposed to eat be changed instead? I know too well the shame and the judgment around certain food. Trying to eat perfectly all the time It leads to a lifetime of disappointment, maybe even rebellion. I had to tell my story. And I found some people that could relate. Now, 6 books later, I have found a lot of people who want to listen. When it comes to what we eat, there's room for joy, for celebration, breaking the rules, dessert. I discovered there are many paths to eating healthy. None of them are right or wrong, just different. Along the way, I realized my story, it wasn't only about weight loss. It was a journey to self-discovery. I found my voice. I learned how to trust myself, to follow my gut. And that's what's been most important for me.
Oh man, Stephanie, thank you so much for your story. We so appreciate it. I love a story about the body that works for you and how you found it in your own way. That is such powerful.
It's been a path.
Right? Also, I want to say she was classy and didn't want to do it herself. But if you Google Dirty Lady Lazy Keto, that's Stephanie's really, it's your empire, right? Like it's books, it's podcast, it's you do coaching, all kinds of things, right?
Hey, I'm just trying to help other people and pay it forward. It's too good of a secret to keep quiet.
I hear you on that, man. It is, especially I feel like during the pandemic, who knows what all of us got up into in our refrigerators. Stephanie, thank you so much for your story.
Thanks for the opportunity to share it.
Oh God, yeah, of course. We are going to give Rohini's story another try. So if you'll bear with us, it's a really good one. And we were so proud to have her. So with that, Evan is our producer is going to cue up her story and we'll give it another shot. I think soon. Oh. Or maybe not. Okay, maybe not. Well, we will try to add it into the video on demand edit because we have the power to do that. It's not a big deal. With that, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching our show. We are going to welcome up all of our storytellers so that we can thank them. I am going to bring up Tracy, Melissa. Are you still here? Stephanie, how we doing? We're getting everybody on here. Gabrielle. Thank you so much for being with us here tonight and sharing stories from your family about the people and the foods that have helped to shape you. We genuinely appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
It was fun. Thanks.
Awesome.
Great job.
Have a great Thanksgiving, everyone. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for joining us. Yeah.
Good night.